Hey, what's up? It's Andy. Welcome to Twin Flame Game Series, and today we're going to talk about the big purges of like your material belongings and your home and car and all those things. And why you want to get rid of them. And I know right now you're probably thinking like, I'll never get rid of my Louis bags and my this and my that, but things change, and this is why. Because, okay, once you're pretty far on the path and you're into, manifestation and law of attraction and now these money blocks are going to start coming into your awareness. You're going to start seeing it everywhere. And limiting beliefs. And you get really into the limiting beliefs. I got really into it. So, and as you're getting into that, you're purging and you're alchemizing, and all this trauma is coming out. And as these traumas and these limiting beliefs and all these things are coming out, you start leveling out and you start kind of looking around, but you don't really know why yet. You just start to feel this like desire to like spring clean, kind of like this desire to like just start getting rid of stuff. And it's this slow thing. Mine was months of just slowly getting rid of stuff, not really understanding why. But you start getting to a point where you start to be like, oh, you start understanding why, right? Because now you start seeing everybody's limiting beliefs, everybody's fucking negative talk and everybody's stuff, right? So you start to see why, you start to see yours and you're like, oh, I have 6 cardio machines and a tanning bed in here since 2020 because in fear of COVID happening again and me not being able to go to gym. And you're like, but I work at a gym and I have access to tons and tons of gyms if I wanted, and so you're just kind of like, okay, and you just slowly start to want to get rid of stuff. and then you get into like, you start to realize like you have to get rid of the old energy to get new, and the same thing with as you're going through the money blocks, it's a vibration and it's a flow. It needs to be like a movement. And so you're like looking at stuff and you see like a box and it's got like, your 6th grade awards, that your mom handed to you, 12 years ago. And you just are carrying it from house to house to house. And you're like, I haven't looked in this box for like 5 years and I was fine. So if it wasn't here, I would still be fine. You start to kind of do that. And so you start kind of getting rid of stuff and it feels good. And you just kind of you feel lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and you just keep wanting to. And then you just look and you're just like, you're like, why is my house, like for some reason you start wanting a smaller area. Like, I just wanted a small, because you start to see the beliefs and the patterns of 3D life. So my house, I had a house that was by the high school. I drove a Range Rover. I had the Louis Vuitton purse and those things because I believed that is a successful woman who made it. I believed that. And I was a shit show, so I didn't make it, you know what I'm saying? But I wanted people to believe that. And so you start to be like, but I don't care what people, it starts to become this pull of, you stop caring, and you realize that that's all 3D stuff. Like, and as you're like leveling up, you realize like, I just want to sit in solitude. You start spending way less. You don't need anything. And so you're like, and then you start to look around. You're like, I have 47 protein shaker cups and I use 1, and you're just like, ugh. You start to get like, ugh. And then you start to see like, ugh, this is bad energy. And you get rid of it, and it just starts happening. And then because you're starting to understand that this is all 3D shit. And this is all like, stuff, and you'll realize that you're like, why do I have 3 extra brooms? And it's always in fear of not being able to buy it again because before you were 7 your mom probably said can't afford that or something like that, you know what I'm saying? So like it's you just start to realize that if I believe I can't buy it again, then I won't be able to buy it again. And so you start to be like, but it's because you start to understand manifestation, and you start to understand the law of attraction. And so you're like, of course I can buy this again. And so you don't fucking need it, you know? And then you'll start to feel like you want to move into a smaller place. It's weird. You just want less. You just want less, and you want solitude. So they will start to, and if you don't, you'll start to feel the pull, and then they will pull you the rest of the way if you don't, bite the bullet and do it. So like, I would see all this moving stuff, and I didn't want to give up my house, and things kept going wrong with the house, the PG&E was like $800. It was just getting too expensive because I had already gone broke and all that stuff from, when my life fell apart and all that stuff. It was, it was just forcing me to move. So finally, and I wanted to too. And so I was waiting for my son to leave the military. And so it was taking a long time, but the pull was getting too intense. And I told him, he's like, I don't care, like you can move or whatever. So I started to move, and I noticed as I started to just surrender, all of a sudden, like, this place came up that I wanted, that was right by the gym, that was everything I needed, and like just flowed. Normally I have to fight for everything. I thought I had to fight for everything I wanted, and it was just working out. And I'm like, okay, then just let it be. That was when I really first started noticing the just being, instead of trying to control everything, how everything would just fall into place. And then I remember thinking, like, so before I would have been like, fuck, I gotta get movers, I gotta do this, where are we gonna take it to the dump? Like, because I was just a control freak. And then all of a sudden my sister calls, and she's like, hey, my neighbor has this huge pod that they're taking to the dump if you want to put anything in. And I'm like, what? And I was just like, okay. And she lived across the street from me. And so I was like, everything just starts to flow, and you're like, wow. And you're like, ebb and flow, motherfucker. You start to kind of see it, and you're like, yeah. And so then, like, it just kept working out. And then the rest of the stuff, and like, my kid's dad, they were having a trash pull, pick up things, and we just took it. It was just kept working out. And so anyway, so I move into a smaller place, right? And now I'm feeling the pull from my car, and my ego is fighting me with the car. So, you start to see the toxicity in even in like loans and stuff like that, and just like getting things, because if it's not in your vibration, to me, I just started understanding that when you're like, I egoically bought that Range Rover, it was like $1,000 a month. And, it wasn't, if I was struggling to do things and forcibly getting it, I remember I drove so far to get it because I needed that white one. And it was just, everything was out of ego to get that car. And so you start to be like, I could take that $1,000 a month and like go to the beach. Like you just start to be like, that is the stupidest. Why would you start to see how stupid 3D is, and you start to see that all that stuff is in fear of not being able to buy it again, or in fear of the way people perceive you, and you start to be like, this is so dumb. And you start to just not, it doesn't resonate anymore, but my ego still fought it, and so the universe will take over for you. I got really scared of the universe for a while, because they will make it happen. And so my car broke down. It broke down, and I was like, fuck. Normally I would have been like calling people. I would have made it happen to get it fixed, right? And I was kind of like, that was when I was just learning to be, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, it broke down, all right. Yeah, and I was kind of like, okay, it didn't bother me, my daughter has a Jeep, and like, I was fine. Got it fixed and everything like that. Then, but I still didn't get rid of it, even though I wanted to. And then my foot's broken now. And so, one day I was driving my daughter's Jeep because my car was broken down, and I was coming out of the store, and I saw some people from my daughter's high school, some parents, and I felt this sense of embarrassment. And I was like, boom, what is that? I caught myself and I'm like, what is that? And I was embarrassed that I wasn't in my Range Rover and that I was in that Jeep, which is a nice Jeep. And I was like, there it is. And so I was like, why? Why do you care what they think about you? And I realized after I sat with that, you sit with that shit. That's your trigger. Sit with it, and I realized that it was because I looked different than the other moms, and I didn't want them to ever think that I couldn't have all the same shit as them and look the way I did. It was all ego. It was all ego of why I had that car. So, like everything, and so it just became like, so they made me realize, like, because I kept saying, I don't care what car I get, I'll just buy a car cash. But it was like, no, it was making me realize that there was a lot of issues of why I had that car. There was a lot of my own, what I thought people thought about me because of the way I've looked. I've been a bodybuilder a long time, So, and just the way I'm different than the other Clovis moms around this bougie area we lived in. So, so once I caught that trigger, it went away, and I sold that motherfucker, just like a few weeks ago. And when I get the cast off my foot, I'm gonna buy a car cash because you start to see also, like, you don't even want things tying you down. You just want freedom. You don't believe in the 3D bullshit. So so after that, after I bought, or after, that was just happened, but then you're going to get to this desire of wanting to leave the city. And I used to always be like, because my other sister, she's awakened, she's always been by the mountains and the beach. We used to be like, it's so weird, she's such a loner, like, how could she not be by Target? Like, I used to be like, that's so dumb. Like, I couldn't understand that because I didn't understand that everything that I couldn't be without was because I was searching for happiness outside of me, And so, once that goes away, you're like, all this shit was because I was searching for something to find happiness and joy and love outside of myself instead of going within. And then all that shit doesn't make sense anymore, And then you even like, you stop, and then I always see all these like healers and stuff that are living in these like remote areas alone. And now I get it, because the 3D doesn't make sense anymore. And so like, even my son, he's like talking negative. It's like this, like I can't even be around it. Like, I'm like, ugh, like, I don't even want to see it. And before, like, I would just join in, and it's like, you don't want to even take part in any of the bullshit that the Matrix has you stuck in, because they teach you to find these amazing material things and to find happiness, and it's the opposite, and you see that shit, and then you don't want it anymore, and that's just kind of how it happens. And so, like, I'm fucking out of here. Like, I trust in divine timing, and I'm just letting it flow, but I know that they're gonna get me out of here and somewhere beautiful and remote, and where there's less toxicity and all of that stuff. So hopefully that makes sense, but it does happen. It does happen because it's all trauma. It is all trauma. And you'll be happier without all your bullshit, you will be. So, all right, c'est la vie.